Yes, it's preparing and
Got it. Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee. It is now 5:03, and we are calling this meeting to order. We're going to start with HB 309. HB 309. This bill is entitled Cooperative Housing Corporations Dispute Settlement. The sponsor is Ann Healy. And this is, if not, this is very, very similar to what we had last year, HB 462, which passed the House 138-0. With that, I'm going to turn over to our counsel, Ben Voigt, to give us a description of this piece of legislation. Ben, you have the floor.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a straight reintroduction from last session, as was mentioned. The bill has no fiscal impact. There's a Senate cross-file. What the bill does is alter procedures for the dispute settlement mechanism under the Maryland Cooperative Housing Corporation Act and makes other technical and clarifying changes. This bill mirrors the condo and HOA dispute settlement bill from 2022. And at the bill hearing, the bill testimony yesterday, there was one request for an amendment about clarifying language, which we've also discussed with Delegate Healy.
Thank you, Ben. And ladies and gentlemen, like Ben indicated, there are dispute resolution processes in HOA and condos. This just mirrors it for co-ops. And Ben, we do have amendments. Is that correct?
That's right. There's
And
one draft amendment, that I can
yeah,
pull up.
yeah. Go ahead, pull the amendment up, please. And
One
the
second.
amendment was suggested by one of the participants in the hearing. And if you could go over the amendment, Ben, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so this is Delegate Healy's bill, and the amendment concern that was raised at the testimony and that was the product of discussion was about the use of the word send. In the bill currently, the concern was that it was vague, that it wouldn't provide adequate notification to a member of the Cooperative Housing Corporation about the proceedings. And after speaking with Delegate Healy and advocates, there was, at this time, the language that was discussed was what's added in blue here, which is to just say that the governing body shall, via certified mail, return receipt requested, send the member at the address of record with the Cooperative Housing Corporation the notification about alleged violations that have been committed. And then similarly, if the violation continues, then there's a second notice about requesting a hearing, and that also is going to be sent via certified mail, return receipt requested, which will help ensure that adequate notice is provided.
I listened to the amendment. Can I get a motion on the amendment, please?
So moved.
Thank you. A motion by Delegate Boyce. Do I have a second on the amendment?
Second.
Second by Delegate Healy. Any discussion on the amendments? Hearing none. All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition on the amendments? Any abstentions on the amendments? Seeing none, the amendments have passed. Can I get a motion on the bill as amended?
Second. Move the amendment. Move the bill as amended. Whatever.
Can I get a second on the bill as amended, please?
Second.
Fantastic. Oh, I see there's there's been a motion and a second on the bill as amended, and I see a question by Delegate Baker. Delegate Baker?
You're muted.
I got it. Were there under committee, under testimony, were there anyone in opposition?
Negative.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no opposition on this at all. Any additional questions on HB 309 as amended? Therefore, all in favor of HB 309 as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition on HB 309 as amended? Seeing none, HB 309 will receive a favorable recommendation from the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee. the
Mr.
full-
Chair,
Yes,
can I bother you for a question? I don't see that particular reprint in my calendar unless I didn't update and get the latest version. I see 93, 139. but I
uh,
don't see, I didn't see that particular reprint.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And if this is helpful, this amendment was something that was worked on subsequent to the bill hearing yesterday.
Oh, I'm
and-
sorry.
No, it's fine. So that's probably what, yeah. But that is the amendment that, that's what it will look like in the reprint. There will be, moving forward, subsequent to this, a finalized amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Counsel. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's okay. Moving on now, any additional questions on HB 309? Seeing none, we will now move on to HB 480. And this bill, HB 480, is same, I think it's the same bill as HB 425 that we voted out of this committee last year with a vote of one out of the House last year with a vote of 137-0. The bill is entitled Real Property Land Installment Contracts, Requirements and Vendor Duty Limitations. The sponsor is Delegate Taylor. Ben, can you give us a brief explanation of HB 480, please?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so sponsors favorable without amendments. As was mentioned, it's a straight reintro from last session. There's no fiscal or local impact. It's cross-filed with the Senate bill. There was no unfavorable hearing testimony. And what the bill does is make various changes to the requirements for land installment contracts, including those relating to title searches, inclusions in contracts, and applicable threshold for when a purchaser may demand a grant of the property, subject to certain conditions. And it also has technical and stylistic changes.
Thank you, Bill. And just very briefly, a land installment contract is just when a seller sells a parcel to someone who wants to purchase it. Doesn't necessarily have to go through the borrowing of mortgages, that kind of thing, but it could at a later point if they wanted to. All the testimony that we heard in the committee was all favorable, no unfavorable testimony, and there were no favorable with amendments on this testimony also.
Mr. Chair, if I can so be inclined, move the bill.
That is great. There's been a motion. Is it a second?
Second.
All in favor, any questions on the bill? Seeing no questions, all in favor of HB 480, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? HB 480 will receive a favorable recommendation from the Environment and Transportation Committee. The next bill on our list is HB 510. And HB 510 is a bill referencing Business Facade Improvement Program, and it's for eligible funding recipients. In our hearing, well, Ben, give us a brief discussion of the bill, please.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So HB 510, the bill title is the Business Facade Improvement Program, eligible funding recipients, and it's sponsored by Delegate Stewart. The sponsor is favorable without amendments. There's no fiscal impact. What the bill does is expand eligibility for funding under the Business Facade Improvement Program in DHCD to include community development organizations that serve at least one sustainable community and apply for the funds. The bill also makes conforming changes. At the bill hearing, there was one request for an amendment from Baltimore County requesting specifically making chambers of commerce eligible for the funds as well. Because, and they went on to, the county went on to state that they are eligible to apply for the state DHCD's other revitalization programs. And Chuck Cook is also here as well from DHCD. If there's questions.
Thank you, Ben. As indicated, this bill has funding from DHCD, and as you all can see on the fiscal note, it is indicated that the items relevant to this particular legislation can all be covered under DHCD's present budget. Also, I will add, ladies and gentlemen, that in the testimony, there was a suggestion about an amendment as being indicated to add Baltimore City Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a little bit hesitant to include that amendment, primarily because this is a piece of legislation that was brought to us by the Speaker of the House, and we have not had the discussion with the Speaker. I am therefore asking us to move the bill as it is without that particular amendment. And if we receive additional information later, we can employ any amendments in the full committee. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking for.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you very much. Is there a second on HB 510 unamended?
Second.
Any discussions on HB 510? I see Delegate Naraki has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly looking at that that committee testimony there from Baltimore County, is that getting at what I believe it was Delegate Ruth was asking on this bill? Is that what that's about?
I don't think it was, I'm not sure if it was Delegate Ruth asking the question. It was a panel. It was a person from, her name was Elizabeth Sachs from Baltimore County that suggested the amendment. I'm not sure if that was from Delegate Ruth.
And yeah, if I
You
may.
want to expand upon
Sure.
that? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. My recollection was Delegate Ruth did ask a question after the bill was presented to Delegate Stewart about Baltimore County, and I believe it was in regards to this testimony, if I'm remembering correctly. Delegate Stewart's reply was something to the effect of that they were agnostic about it, but that the bill, without any amendments, the bill is presented now, was the product of working with the Speaker's office.
Exactly.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you so much.
If I could,
Yeah, yes, Delegate Healy.
if we're going to entertain this amendment later, in the full committee, it was something to think about just in advance of that is this amendment related to the Chamber of Commerce in Baltimore County only, or is it any Chamber of Commerce anywhere in the state that would otherwise be qualified?
The request from the person that testified was, as I recall, very specific to Baltimore County only.
Okay. I think it's just something we need to think about because there may be questions.
Thank you very much for bringing that to my attention. And I appreciate that, Delegate Healy.
Thank you.
And if,
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Ben, please.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am looking at the testimony now and, please, someone can please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm seeing what they're saying is Baltimore County would request an amendment specifically making chambers of commerce eligible for these
Plural,
funds,
plural.
as they are eligible to apply for the state DHCD's other revitalization programs.
I do stand corrected, and thank you, Ben, for pulling that up. I didn't have it in front of me. That must have been the same question that Delegate Boyce was going to ask, because I see her hand has been lowered. So I think we already, we have a motion and a second on this. We're in the question stage now. Any additional questions on HB 510? Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a note about adding redevelopment authorities to this bill. I don't know if there was an appetite. I just remember my note. Did I hear that one wrong? Maybe I heard that wrong in the committee.
I'm going Ben, if you have notes, I don't recall redevelopment authorities being discussed. Ben, if you could expand upon that, if you would.
I don't recall that being discussed, but I could be mistaken.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
I'll be quiet. Thank you.
It's okay. So what we're going to do, we have a motion favorable and we have a second. Any additional discussion on HB 510? Hearing none, all in favor of HB 510 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition to HB 510? Any abstentions on HB 510? Hearing sender, HB 510 will receive a favorable recommendation from the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee. We will now move on to HB 503. HB 503 is a bill relevant to CSST corrugated stainless steel tubing. We had lots of discussions lots of testimony on this bill. And ladies and gentlemen, if we get too caught up into the discussions and details on this, what I'm going to do, if we do, and I'm not suggesting that we don't have to or we shouldn't, if we get caught up in lots of discussions, I'm going to hold it for another meeting only because of the time of the evening tonight, okay? So let's begin with HB 503. And this again is the CSST, the corrugated steel tubing. And Ben, if you could give us a discussion of the bill, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly. And I wasn't sure, Chair Holmes, it looked like two delegates also had their hands raised right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Let's go with Delegate Allen first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ben can go first and do the summary before we ask questions. I think, yeah, Delegate Naraki and I are fine with that.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so HB 503, the bill title is Public Safety Corrugated Stainless Steel Tubing for Fuel Gas Piping Systems, Requirements and Prohibitions. Sponsor is Delegate Stein. We had the bill testimony yesterday. The sponsor is favorable with amendments. There's no fiscal impact. The cross file is Senate Bill 586. What the bill does is any building that uses fuel gas piping systems not subject to specified federal regulations, only corrugated stainless steel tubing that meets the requirements of certain testing criteria as amended, and that is described in the most recent edition of the International Fuel and Gas Code, may be used in new construction of customer-owned natural gas or propane piping systems in a building, a natural gas or liquefied propane piping system in a renovated property under specified conditions, or a natural gas or liquefied propane piping system that requires the addition of a new gas line to the piping system. And there was a lot of favorable testimony. There was also notable unfavorable or favorable with amendment. And the majority of the testimony that I've been able to review after getting a chance to look at the amendment this afternoon related to the usage of testing criteria versus standards and the patents that were could be or could not be a barrier to the successful implementation of this bill.
Thank you, Ben. Let me go to Delegate Allen first, and then we'll go to Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ben, for that summary, because you kind of started where I was going. If I remember correctly, that was the main point of disagreement, was not the standard, but the testing criteria, because it's not a known standard, but it's the testing criteria. I don't think there was yesterday, and I don't know what other info you've received. Is there an alternative? Like if this testing criteria is the point that everyone's disagreeing on, is there an alternative standard by which we can test or measure these components, or are we just out there hoping for the best?
Well, as you indicated, the information that we're basically discussing is not a standard, it's a testing criteria. You hit the nail right on the head there, Delegate Allen, which is what the discussion centered around. The other discussion it centered around was in terms of the testing criteria is not patented, doesn't have a patent to it. Therefore, any manufacturer could, in fact, build or make this material because it's not patent pending. There was also discussion about the ICC, International Code. I forget what the second C stands for, which is revised every 3 years. And that because this is a testing criteria and not a standard criteria, it is not included in the ICC. Your question, Delegate Allen, is there any alternative? I don't see any other alternative because it is not a standard, it's a testing scenario. I'm not opposed to letting this over or holding it until we get some additional criteria for us. I want all of us as best we can to feel comfortable with this. Does that kind of answer your question, Delegate Allen?
It does. If I may, Mr. Chair, one final,
Sure.
I guess this is for Ben. You mentioned it, the ICC. What governs? Because forgive me for being ignorant of this, but what governs like a county code? Do county codes tend to adhere to that international code, or?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not sure exactly about this case. I think we've all seen a lot of legislation in our time here where they're citing, when the state law or the county law, there's, because of the technical nature of the subject, there is sort of just an international code council like we have in this bill. So that's what I guess I would add to that. I'm not aware, but Chair Holmes, if I may, there is an amendment from the sponsor that is their amendment in light of all of this, and I can share the screen if it's helpful, but whatever you'd like. Yeah.
Okay, let's go through the questions first, and then we'll get to the amendment, because I want to hear everyone's concerns about the bill. Delegate Naraki, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mine is also a technical question. I thought I understood what we were talking about the piping, but then kind of we had that unfavorable testimony. It kind of brought some questions in my mind as to, is are we talking about one type of pipe, or does this cover a whole classification of pipes? Because it seemed like there were multiple different types that could fall under this designation. She was talking about like yellow versus black piping, and I just wasn't. I was confused by that, and then my follow up to that would be, are there other applications where these other types of piping might be used? It's not necessarily this, where it may be okay for that to still be, you know, in effect, maybe not for this type of application for this particular building purpose, but if we were to kind of ban it, so to speak, here, would that stop it from being able to be used on like a grill or something like that outside? It brought some confusion into my mind that I wasn't sure about there with that.
Very good questions, Delegate Naraki. Particularly your last question, would us banning this allow this pipe to be used elsewhere? The language in the bill talks about substantial renovations to a home. Substantial renovations usually mean 50% or more, and for new homes. I don't have an answer to your second question at all in terms of can it be used someplace else. I just don't know the answer to that. And I'm writing myself a note. And what was the first question again, Delegate Naraki? I forgot.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. So my first question was, is this particular category, is it like one type of pipe, or are we talking about many different types of
No.
pipe that fall into this particular category? Because it seemed as though there may be some variation, for lack of a better way to describe it, inside of different pipes. And you know, do they all have the same specs, or do some have different specs that are inside of this classification? That's where my confusion was, because she was talking about yellow pipe versus black sleeve versus yellow sleeve, and is that substantially different? I got confused when we started going down that pathway, if we're talking about one or just a whole category of different tubing here.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the confusion. There can be many different types of tubing that can be used, but what the legislation is saying that any types of tubing that is used must meet this LC 1027 standard. So, you know, you can have different types from different manufacturers, but in order for it to be utilized in the houses, it's got to meet this criteria. I don't have a list of the types of pipes that could be used, but if it doesn't meet this criteria, then it's going to be not in compliance with the legislation. Maybe we can get some additional answers to that later on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I kind of was where you were going. I wanted to know if the proposed amendment from the sponsor addresses the problem that we've been talking about whether this will be acceptable for. I understand that it's not a standard, but I mean, for safety purposes, I guess we're concerned about what's being done and what's being used, and so that there's something that's being measured to make sure that the materials are proper for what they're being used for.
Yeah, I agree, Delegate Healy. That's why I wanted to get the questions first and then get to the amendment, which is a little bit backwards. But that's why I wanted to get this out of the way. So perhaps
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize if I missed you saying this. The amendment, where did the amendment come from? Is this a sponsor amendment?
All right, let's do this then.
And it was the result of the hearing, or because I didn't remember talk of an amendment in the hearing?
Okay, let's do this then. I wanted to have discussion prior to the amendment. Now we're getting to the point where we need to, Ben, go to the amendment, if you would.
Okay, I think this is the bill as amended. The sponsor is Delegate Stein. Um,
And
And-
Ben, whose amendment are we looking at?
This is the amendment is sponsored by Delegate Stein.
Okay,
Okay. So it's the amendment is amending two parts of the bill with similar fashion. Looking at the substantive provision here for business regulation, you can see it says a person may not sell, offer for sale, transfer, or distribute corrugated stainless steel tubing that does not meet the requirements of the American National Standards Institute LC1 standard using the LC 1027 testing criteria described in the most recent edition of the ICC code.
and if I could pause here for a minute, you'll see that the sponsor did in fact remove the word standard because as we all recognize that the LC 1027 is not a standard, it is a testing criteria. Please continue, Ben.
Okay, so yeah, that's that. And then it makes a similar change to the second part of the bill, which is in the public safety article. And the amendment was generated, my understanding was, at the time of or around the time of the hearing yesterday, perhaps in light of when other testimony was being submitted as well. So yeah, that's what I guess I would add to that.
Okay, is that the end of the amendments, Ben?
That's correct.
Okay. Let me do this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's continue to discuss this. Just discuss this bill with the amendments. And would like to open the floor to the committee to see if, let me do this first. Can I get a motion to approve the amendments, please?
Move
So
the
moved.
amendment.
Is there a second on the amendments? Is there a second on the amendments?
Second.
All right,
Second,
thank you. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
aye.
All right, now
Aye.
the bill is amended. What I'd like to do, ladies and gentlemen, in order to take questions, I'd like to get a motion and a second and take questions. And if we go to a point where we want to hold this bill, we can do that. But I first want to get a motion on the bill as amended and then go to questions.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second,
All right, we are now in a discussion period on the bill as amended. Right, any questions on the bill as amended, please?
The way things happen around here.
Move the bill is amended.
On how that happens.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended.
It happens.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can you ask someone to mute, please? It's distracting.
Yes, I can't see who that is.
Might be Barry.
Oh, that's I think that might be Delegate Siliberti. Nope, he's muted. He is muted. He is muted. Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the format now of looking at this bill as amended. We have a motion on the floor. Okay. Any additional questions on this bill as amended? Okay, all in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition on the bill as amended? Seeing no opposition, any abstentions on the bill as amended? Seeing none, HB 503 will receive a favorable recommendation from the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee. We will now go on to HB 93, HB 93. HB 93 is a landlord tenant bill. And HB 93 is termination of residential leases, a limitation of liability of rent. And this does have a crossfire. Ben, if you could lower and remove HB 503 from the screen and give us a brief overview of HB 93, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And sorry, I forgot I had it up. Okay.
All right, all right.
HB 93, the title is Landlord and Tenant Termination of Residential Lease, Limitation of Liability for Rent. The sponsor is Delegate Miraku North. The sponsor is favorable with the amendment. There is no fiscal or local impact. It's cross-filed with the Senate bill. What the bill does is expand the circumstances where a tenant's liability for rent may be limited when vacating a premises due to medical reasons by extending existing applicability to individuals with an intellectual or mental disorder and who meet certain requirements. And then the bill also authorizes an additional licensed professional psychologists to complete the necessary certification that a tenant must provide to a landlord. There was a number of unfavorable testimony provided at the bill hearing, but the sponsor has worked with us for an amendment, and we have that amendment now, and I can go over the testimony if that's helpful, or questions, or the amendment.
Yes, I think at this particular point, Ben, it would be helpful to all the members of the committee if we went through the amendments and how these amendments address the concerns of some of the persons testifying in the committee.
Okay, so I think I'm sharing the screen again. As
got
we
it.
recall, this was again about a person who has is in a mental health crisis or has a mental disorder as described in the bill. In this case, the goal of the bill is for a limitation of rent based on that. And so there was, let's see, most of this is just renumbering because they added a definition, but this is sort of the substance of the bill here, as you can see in subsection D. And what the bill does, it's probably best to just go through the testimony that was given and then show how that amendment addresses it. So
That'd be great. That would be a great idea, Ben, please.
thank you. Okay, so the Maryland Department of Health, the Board of Counselors and Therapists, they wanted their main thrust of their testimony was that they wanted the mental health determination to be done by a doctor, not a therapist or counselor. So you can see therapist is struck from the bill. And that addressed the majority of their concern. The delegate's office, the sponsor's office, and myself also received subsequent confirmation that that was the case. There was also testimony from the Montgomery County Intergovernmental Relations Office, and their concern was about the disclosure of a tenant's health information based on the submission of a certificate by one of the individuals, like the psychologist or a physician here. This was another instance where the sponsor's office and myself discussed this further. They reviewed the amended bill. The Montgomery County Intergovernmental Relations Office updated that by saying that they don't have any objection. Part of that concern about public health information being released is less of a concern because, one, in court, they routinely redact sensitive information like social security numbers or other sensitive information that is filed in the event that a case is going to court. Also, the existing law, most of this is existing law. As the physician, as you can see, is providing the certificate that the person has, that they require to be moved to a higher level of care or their mobility is significantly restricted. So in that way, there is already, that's already in existence. So the next piece of testimony, my understanding is that AOBA, MMHA, and the Maryland and MBIA, they no longer have concerns, but I believe some of the individuals are on the call or on the Zoom as well. And the Maryland Board of Psychologists supports inclusion of psychologists in the bill, which you can see has added language in the bill. There was, as was mentioned, therapists was removed, but psychologists is currently still in the bill. There was discussion about the certain amount of educational requirements. That's why physician is the existing law, as you can see in D1. But the thinking is psychologists still have a high level of expertise, and they particularly with addressing mental disorders, which is what the amended language, specifically addresses as well. So, yeah.
So, to conclude, relevant to the testimony as it is associated with the amendments that are here addressed, I think, all of the testimony we heard in the committee. And therefore, I think that what we have in front of us, ladies and gentlemen, is a concentrated effort by the sponsor to take care of all of the issues that were raised. Delegate Healy, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is about number 3 on line 29, where it takes out the reference to intellectual or developmental disability and just talks about a mental disorder instead. How does that change the effect of the bill?
I do not know, Delegate Healy. And that amendment was probably at the request of one of the persons testifying. And Ben, if you could find that testimony, I'm sure that when we look at that, it'll address Delegate Healy's specific question. Because as I recall that there was language in one of the panelists that had these concerns, which is why you see the amendments as they are here. Just bear with us for a minute, Delegate Healy, while Ben finds that specific written document.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. That is discussed in the testimony. The testimony I'm looking at right now is from the ARC Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council, and the Maryland Association of Community Services. And hopefully this is responsive to the question. The testimony in this document says there seems to be this unacknowledged, inaccurate assumption that a person with developmental disabilities won't take care of the property or be good tenants or be more likely to break a lease without warning. We appreciate the intent of the bill and the sponsor's willingness to make changes and its protections for people with mental health conditions who are substantially limited by their lease premises. So this testimony was asking for removal of those references from the bill and in changing the standard to a mental disorder. The only thing in relation to that right now off the top of my head was there's also occasions where in code revision, certain language is replaced for perhaps like substitute language that's more up to date. But yeah.
Well, does this amendment deal with updating the language, or does this deal with addressing the concerns of those groups?
We have the updating the language is something in the code and in the entire article is something we have to take care of at a later point.
Okay,
Um,
I have to, I'm sorry, I have to leave. I have another meeting going on right now, but I will be like listening and paying attention
Okay.
off and on. I'm sorry, I have to go right now. It's 6 o'clock.
I
Thank you.
understand. Thank you. Thank you. Delegate Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ben, just to make sure I understand correctly, so the change as asked for and now received by the ARC, basically we're narrowing the scope of this bill. Is that accurate?
At this time, it looks like they're narrowing it, or they're just it's the terminology that's used.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, the focus is if this is helpful, about people who have a mental disorder.
Right.
And then
Refocusing rather than narrowing, let's say that.
That's right. That's right.
Got it. Thank you.
Delegate Lehman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that maybe I understand what the I think I understand what's happening here with the struck language on intellectual and developmental disability. I think the terminology now, the proper terminology is either a mental health disorder. I don't think you just say a mental disorder. Either mental health or behavioral health is like the accepted terminology, which generally refers to, depression, anxiety, those kinds of things. Developmental disability and intellectual disability is something else entirely, but I don't think you normally just say mental disorder. I think that's what the bill is trying to get at, mental health or behavioral health. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, so your suggestion, it sounds like Delegate Lehman, is to add the word health in
Yeah.
in between in between mental and disorder. Correct.
Mental health means something different clearly than intellectual or developmental disability. I don't know where the idea for the struck language comes from. So I don't know if it's better off being asked of the sponsor, or for her to in turn ask the advocates. But that's what I suspect they're after, is mental health.
Thank you, Delegate Lehman. We have a couple other questions. I'm sorry, Delegate Lehman, are you?
No, that's good. No, that's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Boyce? Delegate Boyce?
Sorry. Thank you for bringing that up, Delegate Lehman, but it looks like mental disorders is an appropriate definition to capture any individual with significant disturbances in individual cognition, emotional regulation, or behavior. It can also be mental illness, and it includes a wide range of mental disorders. So I think it's a word to capture all disorders. So I just wanted to put it out there that I think that's why mental disorders was put there and not anything else.
I got you. So I thank you for looking that up while you were.
Thank you. Did not know that.
Yeah, I'm sure, Delegate Boyce, I know you're a very, very intelligent woman, but I'm sure you didn't have all that memorized. Thank you.
No, sir, not at all. Not at all. Thank you, Google.
Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. See, I would have imagined that Delegate Boyce did have that memorized. I think Delegate Boyce might have answered my question, but when she used the word significant there when we're talking about these disorders, I just wanted to make sure that, if we were changing the terminology, that we weren't opening it up to look, I feel anxious sometimes, right? So that, if I have anxiety, all of a sudden that means that somehow, I might be able to, fall under this category. So Delegate Boyce, is that correct that it's significant? The word significant is there?
The definition I have is, yes, it says it's characterized by a clinically significant disturbance in an individual's cognition, emotional regulation, or behavior. But I think, to be fair, it does say that there needs to be a diagnosis from a physician or a psychologist, which is why I think they had to change it, because a therapist is not like a psychologist that could diagnose someone. So I don't think if someone is anxious, but also anxiety is somewhat of an issue, and it can be significant depending on the degree of someone's anxiety. So
Absolutely, there's no question. Absolutely, Dr. Bush, I agree with that. There's ranges, there's degrees with some of these types of disorders. That's all I was getting at there with that is, some can be more significant for lack
Yes,
of a
yes,
different word
yes.
than others.
I think you're right, sir. You're absolutely right.
Thanks, Delegate.
Thank you both. I appreciate that. I'm going to suggest, ladies and gentlemen, that we make a motion on the amendments that we have in front of us. If I can get a motion on the amendments, I'd appreciate it.
Move the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Chair Holmes.
Yes,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
Delegate Baker had their hand raised.
Oh, I can't see that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Delegate Baker, I
Beginning to think that
didn't
see my hand wave.
I didn't see. I'm so sorry. I did not see it. I'm so sorry. Delegate Baker, you have the floor.
You need to practice your peripheral vision. Hey, just a quick question. This bill has nothing to do with the collection of security deposits and damages if the tenant were to cause any damage to the property, correct?
No, sir. There's nothing in here relevant to that at all. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ben. I don't see anything in the bill is silent.
Well, I didn't see anything. I just wanted to make sure. And you had the attorney there. I was hoping to get an answer from him.
Sure.
for you.
Ben, can you answer Delegate
Yeah.
Baker's question?
So the only thing contemplated in the bill is the liability for rent.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Delegate Baker, I will practice my peripheral vision, sir. We have the amendment in front of us. All in favor of the amendments? I'm sorry. Is there a motion on the amendments?
Move favorable, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second on the
Amendment.
amendments? Second?
Second.
Second. Any questions on the amendments? All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Move the bill.
Second.
And there's a motion and a second. Any questions on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all in favor of HB 9.3 signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition on HB 9.3? Any abstentions on HB 9.3? Seeing none, the HB 9.3 will receive a favorable recommendation from the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee. We will now go to HB 139. And HB 139 is another landlord-tenant bill. And this is relevant to Office of Home Energy Programs and financial assistance. And if you could, Ben, give us a brief description on this particular bill. There was a lot of testimony on HB 139. None of the testimony in HB 139 was unfavorable. There were a couple of suggested amendments, but nothing was unfavorable. No unfavorable testimony on HB 139. Ben, can you give us a brief explanation on this bill, please?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, the sponsor is Delegate Charkoudian. The bill title, in addition to most of the bill, the amendments are the bill. So the bill has been amended significantly. Let's see. Under the amended bill, there appears to no longer be a fiscal impact. I checked with the DHS and the Office of Home Energy Programs and the sponsor's office about this. It's cross-filed with the Senate bill. As amended, the bill adds gas and electric utility services to the types of utilities that landlords are required to provide notice of. This was done because this is the case because for OHEP, that's a program that provides energy assistance to people, the Office of Home Energy Programs, and to do that, though, they need utility bills, utility documentation to be able to provide that assistance, which can sometimes be hung up if a landlord isn't providing the bills to the tenants. The bill, as I've mentioned, is heavily amended. It removes concerns about fines from Maryland realtors. The Maryland Legislative Coalition had concerns about the provision that imposed fines, but this has been removed as well. There's a fiscal impact that we mentioned as well, which they believe no longer has any impact. There's a question about more OHEP claims for assistance. If more tenants are getting access to utility bills, that would equal more funding needs from OHEP. The fiscal note addresses this somewhat by saying, to the extent that OHEP receives an increased volume of applicants for benefits attributable to the bill, DHS can request additional resources through the annual budget process. So that's that without going into the amendment.
I would also suggest that if they get, if the Office of Home Energy Program gets additional requests, it means that the program is working, which is what we are looking for. As Ben mentioned, the bill has been heavily amended in an attempt to address all of the concerns that were discussed in the bill hearings. And I think that the sponsor done a yeoman's job in doing so. Can I get a motion on the amendments, please, so we can get to discussion phase? A motion on the amendment, please.
Move favorable on the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second on the amendments?
Second.
Second. There's a motion and a second on the amendments. Let's go to the discussion phase of the amendments. Does anyone have any discussions or want to talk about some of these amendments? Delegate Healy.
Yeah, I guess my question, since the amendments become the bill, my only question really is whether or not the people who were in favor of the bill unamended would have objections to some of these amendments. And if anybody's reached out or has any sense of what they were saying, or whether they were just generically in favor of the concept.
I'm gonna pass it over to Ben, but as I recall the testimony from those that were favorable, they were generically, as you put it, favorable of the concept and the bill. And I can't specifically say that the current amendments would change their vision or focus or change their mind on this. Ben, if you can address that specific question from Delegate Healy, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding is that the sponsor at the bill hearing noted that they had worked with OHEP and with DHS on this.
Okay.
So.
Is that
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second on the amendments. Any additional discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition on the amendments? Any abstention on the amendments? That being the case, the amendments are passed. Do we have a motion on the bill as amended, please?
Mr. Chair, I move the amended bill favorable.
Thank you. Is there a second on the bill as amended?
Second.
Any discussion on HB 139 as amended? Delegate Lehman.
Delegate Healy.
Delegate Lehman. Delegate Lehman.
Yes.
Mute yourself, please.
That's not. I'm sorry, that's not me.
Delegate Healy.
That's not me.
Healy.
Delegate Healy.
Can your admin mute them?
Thank you. Okay. All right. Got you. All right. All in favor of the bill as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition on the bill as amended? Any abstentions on the bill as amended? Hearing none, HB 139 will receive a favorable recommendation from the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee. Let's now move, ladies and gentlemen, to HB 241, Housing and Community Development, Just Community Designation. Let us, HB 241 is a bill that was put in by request of DHCD, and they are on the line if anyone wants to entertain questions from them. It is a bill, as I indicated, introduced by DHCD, and this bill, in terms of its testimony, most of the testimony was favorable on this bill. There was a lot of testimony that was provided as unfavorable, but as we have been seeing lately in the last couple of years, a lot of this unfavorable testimony does not provide any testimony. They're just signing, the persons are just signing up as unfavorable without providing any particular reasons of their unfavorable testimony. So if I removed the persons that had a position of unfavorable on here, it would leave us with only favorable testimony. And with that, I'm going to open it up to Ben so that Ben can give us a brief description of the legislation.
And if I may, Delegate Naraki had their hand raised. I don't know if you.
Ben, why don't you give the description, then I'll allow the chair to recognize me.
Okay, thank you. So that's right. The testimony is all favorable. MACO had an informational piece of testimony that they submitted, but as was stated, the sponsor of the bill is favorable without amendments. There's no fiscal impact. It's cross-filed with the Senate bill. What the bill does is authorize the governor on the recommendation of the Secretary of Housing and Community Development to designate an area as a just community if the Secretary determines the area meets specified criteria. The bill also establishes related findings in the intent of the General Assembly that the just community designation be used to prioritize state funding to increase racial, economic, and health equity in the state, and requires the governor to identify state programs under which a just community must receive priority for state funding. As I mentioned, the feedback from MACO was that one portion of the bill was possibly overbroad, but otherwise favorable.
Thank you, Ben. Delegate Naraki, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. My question actually was about that informational testimony from MACO. I wasn't sure if they had provided any further clarification as to, maybe clean that up a little bit to, kind of get to what they're saying there. If there's any, I don't know if there's anyone from MACO on tonight to provide a little bit more information about what they're saying in that letter there. I was just curious.
I don't know if there's anyone here. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's anyone here from MACO. But letter of information, I think we probably have covered most of the data in their informational letter.
Well, yes, Mr. Chair, obviously they say the point that, but then they don't offer kind of what those guardrails may be to kind of clarify that in the letter there. I was just curious if they had some suggestions if there's a way to tighten it up to kind of then get them to be favorable on the bill. That was kind of my question there.
Okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll just move forward and we'll allow them to provide us with additional information between now and when the full committee meets. How about that, Delegate Naraki?
Sounds great, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I thought I saw another hand up. Perhaps I didn't. Do I have and there are no amendments. Is that correct, Ben?
That's correct.
All right. Can I get a motion on HB 241, please?
Move the bill.
Thank you. Is there a second on HB 241?
Second.
Any discussion on HB 241? Seeing none, all in favor of HB 241 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition on HB 241? Any abstentions on HB 241? Seeing none, HB 241 will receive a favorable recommendation from the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee. We will now go to the last bill of the evening. And I'm gonna do this, this bill is HB 7. And I'm gonna do this bill a little bit differently than we have done the others, ladies and gentlemen. HB 7 is entitled Housing Innovation Pilot Program and Housing Innovation Fund. It basically establishes this fund. And the first thing that I'm gonna do, ladies and gentlemen, is to have Ben give us an overview of this bill. And then I'm gonna ask Mr. Paul Williams to step in and give us some additional information on HB 7. Ben, you have the floor, and then we'll go to Paul Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Williams. Okay, so HB 7, the Housing Innovation Pilot Program and Innovation Fund is sponsored by Delegate Stewart. The sponsor is favorable with amendments. The sponsor kindly provided a sort of a rundown of the amendments and questions in the email this afternoon or this morning. This bill is a reintroduction from last session, although there's amendments. It has a fiscal impact that Delegate Stewart highlighted. The amended bill authorizes the governor to use $15 million in fiscal year 2025 and then the subsequent 4 years. Delegate Stewart added that Chair Corman, Chair Barnes, the Speaker's office, and Delegate Stewart have worked to find funding in the capital budget for this pilot program. It's cross-filed with Senate Bill 203. And then Mr. Williams, perhaps, if Mr. Chair, if they want to go into reviewing the bill, I also have the amendments up. If you'd like me to share that with Mr. Williams or however you think is easiest.
I'd like to go to Mr. Williams first, and then Ben, have you talk about the amendments, please. Mr. Williams, you're here, so if you could.
Great.
Oh, you are right there, Mr. Williams. There you go.
Right here.
I was looking for you. I got to do as Delegate Baker suggests. I need to work on my peripheral vision. Mr. Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair and members of the subcommittee for having me today. My name is Paul Williams. I'm the executive director at a organization called Center for Public Enterprise, and we work directly with government agencies on housing programs. We largely work with housing finance agencies and with housing authorities and other state instrumentalities that do economic development activity on financing program design to help them better and more efficiently achieve their goals. So what this bill would do is essentially build on a innovative program that Montgomery County Housing Opportunities Commission has developed over the past 5 years or so. And that program that they created they call it the Housing Production Fund. And essentially what it does is it allows them to produce additional housing, mixed income housing that doesn't use any low-income housing tax credits, volume cap, project-based vouchers, or any of these conventional HUD subsidies. And the reason that's valuable to them and to other agencies around the country who are starting to kind of pick up on this innovative tool is every state in the country, and Maryland included, has a limited availability of these federal subsidies from Congress, from the federal government every year, and they all get used every year. So agencies that come up with these kind of innovative tools to produce beyond what that limitation allows for are in a much better place to meet the needs of their communities. So what this bill would do is create an opportunity for counties that are not as well resourced as Montgomery County to have access to a tool like that to develop these types of mixed income properties that again don't require the use of these conventional subsidies, which are already underallocated and oversubscribed. I'm happy to answer any questions about what Montgomery County's program is and how it works, what the idea is for how this would kind of integrate into DHCD. I'm familiar with the amendments as well, so feel free to ask any questions you'd like if you have them.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I appreciate that. And I have been watching the Housing Production Fund in Montgomery County very admirably for quite a while, since I'm on a commission from Montgomery County, and periodically the production firm from Montgomery County does come up in the commission that I serve on in Montgomery County. Ben, if you could, I would now like for you to go through the amendments on the bill. Uh-oh, did I lose you, Ben? Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Thank
And
you.
Mr. Williams, if this is the reprint from the amendment office, there's also the kind of like annotated copy. I'm not sure if you have a heavy preference.
I have
for
a copy. I have a copy of this in front of me as well, so I'll follow along.
Okay. So this is the bill as amended. It might be best for you, Mr. Williams, to, if you want to go through it, or I can go through it with you.
Sure. So let's see. I'm looking. The copy I have has highlights on.
Okay, that's fine.
So let's go. So on, yes, so that on Ann's County governments. So this amendment here is the way it was, the text was originally written. The access to this tool would only apply to housing authorities, which are, HUD accredited agencies. Not every jurisdiction in Maryland has a housing authority, so this expands eligibility for access to this tool to other instrumentalities of county governments. So that's that one. And then let's see, what's next? This is the same thing.
And this is for the fund and the uses of the fund, just so, yeah.
Yeah, this next page is all just the same. This is just adding and county governments to all of these various lines. The next substantive change, I believe, is on the next page. Yes, here. So this changes that highlighted "or" in yellow. That seems to have been a clerical mistake or something of the sort. It was written as and it should be an "or." This is setting the minimum standards for that income mix in these properties. And then this part here is kind of giving DHCD just a short list of criteria to consider when applicants apply for access to this resource. The one that I want to highlight that's kind of the primary innovation here is that fourth one, that the project does not use tax credit equity or tax exempt volume cap. And again, the point of that is to ensure that this tool serves as something expansive beyond what DHCD currently has resources to do, and prioritizes essentially developments that would not occur but for access to this tool, which makes it an expansive rather than a just kind of chopping up the pie differently tool. Again, county governments.
And then the struck language, Mr. Williams.
Provide evidence. That is that again is similar thing for to ensure that smaller jurisdictions have access to a tool like this. That previous language would require that anyone who wants access needs to provide dollar for dollar matching, which of course a well-resourced county like Montgomery County could do, but perhaps another county may have trouble doing. So that's removing that barrier. Let's see. And then the solicitation of applications. So this is, the idea here is DHCD already has an application solicitation program for its low-income housing tax credit program. That's called the Qualified Allocation Plan, which every state does. This would just ask them to have a a minimal kind of application process, to ensure some standards are met with project selection and things like that. And again, that second struck line is also the dollar match. This next strike is that prioritization of non-tax credit properties is included elsewhere in the bill, so it is struck from this part, but that concept is not struck from the bill overall. It's just moved to a different location. And then again, this is the same. This next highlighted piece is the same as before, with not wanting to disadvantage lower resource counties from access to the funds.
Thank you,
then,
Mr.
Yep, and then there's the dollar amounts, and that's it. So happy to answer any questions. Let me know if you have them. I'm happy to stay on for a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Before we move further, I would like to get a motion on the amendments so we can go to discussion period on the amendments, please. Have a motion on the amendments.
Move the amendments.
Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor of the, oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion on the amendments? Discussion on the amendments. Anyone want to discuss any of these amendments? And
Mr. Chair.
I don't see any.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I had my camera off. I was trying to wait.
There you go. Okay. Delegate Lehman.
Yeah, I'd like to get some sense of the, for these appropriations, first of all, I guess, where are these funding levels coming from? Whose recommendation is this?
Mr. Williams?
I have some so the sense I have is that there was a pool of capital funds for the fiscal year 25 budget earmarked for housing, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the names or the positions, but someone who was in a position to split those funds into different pots had a conversation with the bill sponsors and agreed to. I believe the amount was on the order of 100 million. It was a large pot, and this is a small piece of that that's being taken for this tool.
And I think it discusses it somewhere in the fiscal note, which I can't find off the top of my head either.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a lot of information to take in. Okay.
Ben, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If it's helpful, at the top of this, I mentioned that the funding would be from the capital budget for this pilot program, and it has, and forgive me if it's not helpful, but the Delegate Stewart had been in conversation with Chair Corman, Chair Barnes, and the Speaker's office about that.
Oh, okay, that's helpful to know it's capital and not operating. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that.
Delegate Naraki. Did he? I thought he had.
I briefly had my hand up, Mr. Chair. I was just going to point out what Ben just pointed out.
Oh, great.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question though. You're reading my mind. We're synced up today. I hadn't even raised my hand yet. If that's okay, if this is the appropriate time, are we still on amendments or are we on the bill?
Yeah.
I don't be out of order.
Yeah, we are on amendments. Yes.
Okay, I will hold my question until we are on the bill itself, Mr. Chair. If that's okay, or
Yeah,
if
that's
I
fine.
can ask now, if you would like, I'll do whatever you would like, Mr. Chair.
Do you, let's wait till we do the amendments, then we'll go to the bill.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, sir.
All right, okay, so, I don't see any additional hands unless I'm missing someone. Okay, so we are discussing now the amendments. All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there a second, or I'm not, is there any objection to the amendments? Anyone voting no on the amendments? An abstention on the amendments?
Yeah, I'm going to abstain because I wasn't able to hear the full discussion. I was in another meeting.
Okay. Got you. All right, great. So, we are now on the bill as amended. Do I have a motion on the bill as amended?
Move the bill as amended.
Do I have a
Second.
second? I do have a second. We are now in a discussion period on the bill as amended. Delegate Naraki.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more of a technical question, if you will. So a lot of the bills that we've seen kind of in a similar posture have made note that modular housing was okay to be a part of this. And it's kind of a cousin industry in this case here. So I'm just want to make sure that this wouldn't exclude, when we're talking about new housing, the ability to use modular housing.
Oh, that's a great question, Delegate Naraki, because modular housing, particularly in vertical, actually, that's not true either. There's some modular housing now that's being constructed in single-family homes, and unless someone identified it to you as modular, you would not know it was modular. Mr. Williams, can you address Mr. Delegate Naraki's question about the removal or silencing of the modular homes?
As far as I understand, the text is agnostic to the construction type of the housing. So if a particular county or agency wanted to do a modular project, they would be allowed to do so with this program, as long as DHCD saw it fit to fund that.
Thank you. Does that address your question, Delegate Naraki?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Right, and Delegate Naraki, I'm very, very grateful and thankful to you for asking that question, because so like I said, like I indicated, some modular housing is absolutely phenomenal. You would not know it was 10-foot ceilings, 4-car garages, etc. We are now on the bill as amended. Any additional questions on the bill as amended? Hearing none, all in favor of HB 7 as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Any objection or on HB 7 as amended? Hearing none, any abstentions on HB 7 as amended? Hearing none, HB 7 as amended will receive a favorable report from the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our hearing tonight. I really appreciate all of your patience. Thank you for all the great questions, and we will see you soon, same time.